Welcome to Keiser Voices, the story of success, brought to you by Keiser University Graduate School, here where the academic world meets personal triumph. Join us today as we dive into the captivating tales of success.
Welcome back, everybody, to another exciting episode of Keiser Voices. And this April, we're really excited about the conversations we are going to be having all month long, because we're going to take you behind the scenes and really give you an insider scoop on the day-to-day life for those of us here at the graduate school, and really breaking down the different departments and the active roles that they play. I have with me Ms. Adriana Lobo, who is our social media manager and director here at the graduate school. She's going to be answering our insider questions about the power of social media, especially in higher education. But I'm also going to join in the conversation as she asked me questions about what's it like to be in student services and taking a look at things beyond the classroom. And we're doing this episode jointly. I'm really excited about it. And I'm really excited for you guys to have Miss Lobo on camera instead of off camera, because she's typically behind the scenes, because there's a lot of overlap when it comes to your job, Adriana, and my job. So I'm really excited that we're getting the opportunity to do a podcast together.
Yeah, I'm excited as well to share our insights.
So I want to pick on you first, because I know you have questions for me too. But you really, truly help showcase those bright, shining moments at the graduate school that I don't know that if we didn't have social media, we wouldn't really be able to truly to showcase or show off or highlight. Can you explain to the listeners how social media helps the graduate school with the communication, whether we're talking internal audiences or even external audiences?
Yes, social media is a powerful tool for Keiser University Graduate School. We have had social media almost a year and a half now. So it allows us to connect with multiple audiences in real time. Internally, it helps foster a sense of community among students, faculty, and staff by sharing updates, highlights, achievements, and academic resources. And externally, it also serves as a key channel for prospective students to learn about our programs, student experiences, and the supportive learning environment that we offer. And it also strengthens our alumni network, keeping graduates engaged with the university beyond their time in school. So it's really good for us.
Now, a lot of people in this day and age, I would like to say, think that anyone can do social media, which in a sense, yeah, anyone can go in, they can create a social media account on any of the social media platforms. But when you're looking at something like what you're doing here at the graduate school, or other, or businesses and organizations where they have this social media to grow their community and increase their communication, it actually takes strategy. Like it's not just so simple as let me just type out some words, let me just throw a picture. There are actual strategies that are involved to keep people engaged with you.
Yes, absolutely. Engagement is all about relevance and authenticity. So we try to do that. And we focus on creating content that speaks directly to our audience's needs and interests, whether it's student success stories, faculty insights or highlights, career tips, or interactive Q&A sessions. And we also do visual storytelling, short videos, and testimonials, and that play a big role in capturing, the attention. We also encourage participation through discussions. We try to do always like a call to action in every post, so we can communicate with and engage with our audience. So ensuring our platforms feel like a space for dialogue and not just information.
So how do you balance the content? Like, obviously there's that informative piece. there's just trying to engage, there's trying to share the institution's mission, but also celebrating some amazing moments from, faculty presenting maybe at a conference to student accomplishments or even just day-to-day student activities. Where does that balance come from?
It's all about understanding our core message and weaving into everything we share. Keiser University Graduate School is committed to flexible student-centered education, so our content reflects that. Whether we're highlighting online learning success stories, faculty expertise, or career advancement opportunities. So we mix informative posts about academic programs with engaging content like this, like behind the scenes moments with our podcast. We have also, a podcast for our YouTube channel, also our graduate newsletter that we share weekly with all our internal audiences, and also our quarterly newsletter that is we focus on a theme. Like we released our fourth quarterly newsletter on criminal justice last week. So we try to connect with our faculty, students, and everyone who wants to participate. So we mix informative posts and always, try to connect with our students with testimonials on our alumni as well.
I'm always really impressed, and I know like when we're in meetings, I always say like how impressed I am with the stuff that you're doing behind the scenes, because one of the things that I think I appreciate the most about like your role for the institution is that you're taking the intangible and turning it tangible. And I say that because, in conversations with students or even prospective students or even community partners, they're like, well, you're just an online school. But there's so much more to that. Like, these are real people behind the scenes. These are real people, attending the school, and these are real, truly tangible accomplishments. And I think if you were to ask me, that's truly like like something that you accomplish, that you actually make happen. Like, you turn this like idea, even though it's very successful, and we have students enrolling, we have students graduating, we have very active community partners helping to shape the programs, but you help the community and the public see that. Like, you make it visible to everyone. And I think that's like a major accomplishment and a chore in and of itself, to a strategy to have. Like, how do I turn this campus into this visual aspect? And one of the ways you did it is this podcast. And I've been waiting for the opportunity to ask you 3 questions that I think would be fun to answer. Where did the idea of the podcast come from?
Well, that was really funny because when I think it was my first day in a graduate school, so I had a meeting with Dr. Robert Keiser, and he told me, like, what's one idea that you've always wanted to do, but you haven't done it yet? And I said, like, randomly, oh yeah, podcast. So yeah, he told me, like, okay, so do a podcast for graduate school. And I was like, what? Like, I was scared at the beginning because I didn't know how to make it, because mostly the podcasts are like face to face, with a camera and everything, and how I do a podcast virtually. And yeah, so I started like thinking about that and figure out that we could do it in Teams, and then make a template and everything. And it came out really well. So we can have participation from internal, but also external speakers. So yeah.
The one thing our listeners don't know that I know, and I'm always like I don't know where you come up with it, but where do you come up like with the topics and then the questions? Because you always have some very interesting, very like in-depth questions for the guests that come onto the podcast.
So with the topics, we figured out at the beginning with Dr. Robert that we should do like a theme every month. So, for example, the first theme, I think it was leadership. Dr. Robert Keiser was the first episode. And we didn't have a host at that time. And I didn't want to be a host. So people needed to speak like for an hour. So it was crazy. And they all say yes. But it has been evolving. And you were our first like episode because Dr. Robert did like the introduction of the podcast. So you were our first episode on leadership, and then you became like the official host. So every month we do a different topic, and it helped me like, oh, okay, let's do mental health month or Hispanic Heritage Month. So I think now you propose all the themes because like you are so creative on that, and then with the questions, I try to do them like relevant to the topic and different and also like general in case that the speaker wants to share another perspective.
No, I've enjoyed the podcast, is whether I'm the person doing the interviewing or I've just been listening to them. Like for me, they feel like they're like free courses with a lot of the topics we have.
Yeah.
So it's been so fantastic. And then every time I get the questions from you for whoever our guest is on that episode, I'm like, oh my gosh, like how does she do that? But the podcast is just one piece of this social media equation that truly plays a vital role and even helps with the different trends in shaping the future of the campus and social media education. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes, and the landscape is constantly evolving, but a few key trends stand out, like the podcast. Um, Personalization is becoming increasingly important, and so a student expect like content that tailor to their interest and academic journey. And the video content is working so well, so we try to do that. Um, Especially like short forms, like small videos, and maybe like interactive formats. Also, for us, it works really well the quarterly newsletter because different faculty and share with us their articles on a specific theme. So it's really, really good. So if someone is interested in like, criminal justice, for example, they can read the newsletter and they have like a broader perspective on the theme on criminal justice. So um, also AI driving tools are also transforming how institutions communicate, allowing for more efficient responses. And so social media is playing a bigger role in professional branding, helping students and alumni showcase their skills and connect with industry professionals. And that's what we try to do.
So before I put myself in the hot seat and turn over host duties to you, I do have one final question. What advice would you give to students who want to use social media professionally, while they are in the graduate school?
My advice will be to be intentional with your online presence. And social media is a powerful networking tool. So you use it to build your professional brand, as you know, because you work with all these students who need to enhance their LinkedIn profile to search for jobs. So connect with industry leaders, share your insights, and showcase your expertise. Don't be afraid of that. And keep your profiles updated. In LinkedIn, for example, engage in meaningful discussions and be mindful of the content you share.
Thank you for giving us some insight into what it is that you do here and how it impacts the graduate school as a whole. And I really am glad that we could talk about like the insights behind the podcast and some of the other communications that we're constantly sharing with our audiences, because I think it really does help just further connect that people element of the institution.
Yes, thank you so much. And also thank you for being the host. You're the official host of the Keiser Voices podcast, and I always put you on the spotlight. So thank you for accepting.
No, it's been fun. Like I said, I feel like I get a bunch of free classes every time we do these.
Okay, now it's your time to be on the spotlight.
All right.
So, my first question will be that you support students beyond the classroom all the time. So, what key services does student services provide for graduate students? Can you share some?
Yeah. So I really feel that that's an open-ended question because it's always based on whatever that student or whatever that alumni needs in that moment, and it changes. We have students who need a help or assistance, like working out their resumes, identifying job opportunities. Maybe it's licensure or certifications, but sometimes they're already working, and which is typically the case that we see with the graduate school. We see a lot of times that they are working adults who are looking to grow professionally, and that's why they're coming to the graduate school, because of the flexibility of that online modality that we offer. But for them, it's more about, how do I grow professionally? How do I pick up those other skills that I need to be successful? So, I always say we're so lucky to be in the student services department, because we get to be with a student from like day one to well out in the future, years down the line. And it's always amazing having opportunities to interact with alumni, because there are cases where we turn to our alumni and we ask them for help. We have an amazing alumni population who come back and sit on our advisory boards, or come to our new student orientations, or even let us pick their brains on the podcast. And they're willing to be that mentor type role for the students. And so sometimes that's what our interactions with students looks like. It looks like, well, how can we change our relationship and our partnership now that you've transitioned from student to alumni and alumni to professional out in the workforce? So it's always interesting to see like how we can help the students or alumni across their needs.
Yes, and I know that your work is really, really hard because you're 24/7 all the time. Every time I text you, you answer me really fast and you're in everything. And I never have seen you like tired. Like you're always so energetic and positive.
You clearly have not seen me the day after graduation.
But you're in everything, so you're multitasking all the time. How does student services help students balance academics, work, and personal life?
One of the biggest things, whether you're a student or a working professional, is understanding that work-life balance and time management. You can't have work-life balance. You can't have balance as a student if you don't understand key concepts of time management. And that includes how to say no. Like, no, I can't. So what we really tried to do is take it back down to the basics. You're actively in school, especially when we look at our doctoral students, you need to make time. Like, you have to dig out time in your schedule to sit down and do your homework, respond to discussion posts. But you don't want to do so while ruining other relationships. So you have to be very mindful. So, a lot of times, we talk about calendar systems, and I use both an electronic calendar system and a paper calendar system to keep myself organized. Even I'm not in school, but I still have to balance meetings that I need to be at, supporting students maybe in their doctoral defenses, community events, guest lecturers, podcast recordings. And then I have my home life. I have a child, I have a husband, and I need time for that as well. So our biggest messages to the students is understanding when it's time to say no, how to prioritize what's important versus what could maybe wait, and then how do we work in those other elements that we want to do. We offer a lot of great seminars, but if you're working and you still have homework to do, maybe that's not something we do right now. So, identifying like the due dates and paying attention to deadlines, because you're always going to have a deadline, whether it's a homework assignment or a work deadline. So just understanding how to really focus, maybe make that to-do list, or to schedule out in your calendar blocks of time. Like I block out time in my calendar to make sure I take a break. My staff will do that too. They'll block off time in the calendar to make sure that they're taking a break. They're stepping away from the computer while they're here at work. So, making sure that you have those pockets of time so you can accomplish everything can happen. It can happen. You just need to manage your time and be aware of how your time is spent.
What initiatives are in place to support students' mental health and well-being?
I think the conversation on that has really changed since COVID. Like, I know a lot of people don't want to talk about COVID anymore. They're like, that's in the past. I want to move forward. I want to move on. But I really think that because of COVID, conversations with mental health really started to change. I'm not a clinical mental health professional practitioner. That's not my background. My background is more in sociology and social services when it comes in advocacy, when it comes to talking about those areas. But what we're seeing is, and if you look historically, there's always been taboos around mental health and mental health conversations. And now we're finally starting to see a trend in the positive light where we're no longer afraid to ask for help. No longer just say, hey, I'm struggling, or hey, I'm having a moment, whatever that might be. I myself have anxiety issues, and I'm much more vocal about them since post-COVID, because it's become a much more comfortable conversation. So the biggest thing that we do for our students is letting them know that it's okay to not be okay. Like, it's okay. There's nothing wrong with needing a moment, needing to take a break, needing to talk to somebody about that. So some of the things that we do, and probably my favorite, is we celebrate and raise awareness during Mental Health Month. The podcast will convert to being mental health conversations. Live sessions with the students will convert to being mental health conversations. So we're putting it out there, and we are taking that first step. I remember in one of my courses, and I'm actually a Keiser alumni myself from the MBA program. One of the courses on culture. So I know it's not related to mental health, but it was on culture. And one of the things that they had said in this study that we had done was half the battle is starting the conversation, and somebody's got to start it. It might be controversial, but somebody has to start the conversation. So I would like to say that, here in student services, we are helping to start the conversation and pushing students to talk about that more. So I'm excited anytime we can present that to the students. We work with an organization called Meta, which is a free service to our students that helps connect them to mental health professionals in their area, or even virtually, because again, like we just talked about, like there's this crazy balance. And so sometimes I feel like people put off asking for help because they feel like, I just don't have the time. Like I can't just leave work. But, since again, COVID, like we're seeing a transition in even how those mental health services are provided. We're also bringing the experts to the table. I mentioned Mental Health Month. We were fortunate enough to have a few months ago for NAMI, which is the National Allegiance for Mental Illness, their executive director of Broward County. He came and he spoke to the students about mental health in the workplace. We have a lot of qualified faculty who do teach in the psychology discipline or in the clinical mental health discipline that are sharing their stories of the people that they're seeing, to a certain degree, obviously, but we're putting out what those helpful services are. And what I'm excited that we're doing for the first time, and I'm sad to say it's the first time, but I'm happy it's the first time too, is that this month for mental health, we're also taking a moment to talk about our veterans who do have to have different conversations because of what they've experienced in the military, whether they served in the war or not, and even what that transition looks like from active duty soldier to veteran civilian. So this year for mental health, one of the sessions that we're hosting is called Veteran Conversations. And I'm fortunate enough that one of my colleagues from a different campus, he's a veteran himself and he's been there. And our conversation is called Asking for Help. How do we ask for help? Like how, you have to, like, and when do I do it and how do I do it? So a lot of times our initiatives are as simple as just providing the resources necessary. Like, here are the resources, and putting them at the student's fingertips so then they can take that next step when they're ready to. And it's always about letting them know that you're not alone in that journey.
No, I totally agree. And the students know, and they can reach to a student services and ask for help, and you can connect them with this meta, or at least tell them that these different tools exist for the Keiser community and that they can ask for help. So how do you foster a sense of community among graduate students, especially online learners? I don't know if our listeners know, but you work also for eCampus and Latin division with undergrad and grad students, and also with graduate school. So you have a lot of online students.
Yeah. It takes
under you
a moment. Yeah. No, it definitely takes a moment. There's a lot to try to figure it out. And there's no perfect equation. It's something that I think at first would disappoint me when you wouldn't have like a large turnout. But when it comes to providing a sense of community to our students and even our alumni, it's letting them know that there's these different avenues. We have students who, and I think I see it more in the undergraduate than graduate, where, now they finally have that opportunity to go further education to get an associate's or bachelor's degree. They didn't have it before. They had to go straight out into the workforce, or it was unattainable for various reasons. So they're really coming in and they're looking to get the education and get the degree so that they can continue on into the next step. So what they need and the conversations they want to have is vastly different than our graduate school students. They've already accomplished that first step in obtaining a higher education degree. And now they have an appreciation for that. And then graduate school students also have an appreciation for those other elements. And that's not to say that, you don't have that in undergrad or the vice versa in the graduate, but those are kind of patterns that I've kind of picked up on. So with the graduate school students, we like to provide them for the opportunity to be peers to each other. And that comes through student organizations. And they truly relish those moments to connect on a peer-to-peer level. And so we see that through a lot of our student organizations, like our Student Government Association, Psychi, which is an honor society for our psychology students. And there's even Alpha Phi Sigma, which is the Criminal Justice Honor Society, just to name a couple of the organizations that we have. But they use those forums to connect on a peer-to-peer level. And then with our undergraduate students, we have the same opportunities for them, but really what we find with them is how to develop as a professional. That's really what they want to be a part of. Those are the conversations that they want to have. So I get the opportunity to try to see how we can bridge those two aspects together. So is it a conversation about, you might need to continue into a master's or doctoral degree to actually get the certification or the licensure that you're looking for to hit that dream job. The graduate school students provide great mentorship for the undergraduate. They're a great example of, I've already done that. I understand somewhat of the path that you're walking. Let me provide the insights. And they help us show like the importance of some of those other aspects that which we try to impress upon all of our students. It's not just about the education. You also need that professional development piece, right? There are still certain skills that aren't specific to any discipline. So we get the opportunity in student services to try to come up with, how do we build that community? What does it look like? Does it look like student organizations? Does it look like special seminars and guest speakers? Or does it look like just providing them a moment to talk or celebrate? We have in-person events, we have virtual events. Latin Division has been putting on a virtual conference for a couple of years now. that's very successful. And so it allows us to connect with people abroad and our live sessions that we offer through student services, whether they're workshops or special presentations, we can connect with the community at large from anywhere. But we also do things in person when we have through alumni events. We're really excited that this year we are doing an alumni night tied to graduation, and we host in-person graduation, which we've been hosting an in-person graduation, but we're always looking on how to make it more exciting for the students because they're traveling to be with us because we have all these online learners. So when they come to us in person at a residency or they come to us in person at a graduation, we want them to already feel connected to us. And that goes just by having conversations and putting information at their fingertips. And that's whatever information is important to them. There is no, like I said before, no right or wrong equation. It's just a matter of providing all these various opportunities and putting them in the hands of these adult learners so that they can make the decisions on what's going to be best for them. And that's truly where we can come together as a community.
Well, that's incredible. And what advice will you give to students who may be struggling to stay motivated?
That's a great question because unfortunately you have to have that. And so I try to start that conversation with day one in the orientations when I'm in an orientation, and the rest of the department does a really great job in the orientations too. One of the things I encourage a student to do is to write down your why. There's a reason why you chose the program that you chose the career path, the educational path that you chose. You have goals in mind. You see something in the future for you, because the reality of the situation is there are going to be just as many lows as there are highs. You're going to have a moment where maybe you struggle to do statistics. I know a lot of people aren't a fan of math, so they get fearful of math. But then maybe in an English writing course or a literature course, they're going to excel. So there's going to be those moments of lows and highs. So when it comes to struggling to stay motivated, I encourage you to write down like your why and keep it someplace where you can look at, whether it be a Post-it note, electronic note, maybe something next to your mirror, maybe it's in whatever little workstation you have set up for yourself, to work on work or to work on schoolwork, but keep it someplace where you can constantly be reminded of the why. And then the other tip I tell students, and it's more so for those students who are in the health fields where they're interacting with like patients or practitioners. I really truly say this to them the most, but it could be relevant across the board, is I tell them constantly ask yourself if you are the person that you would entrust with the care of your own family members. And I recently spoke to that at our white coat ceremony and our pinning ceremony for our family nurse practitioner students, because they literally hold lives in their hands. They're going to be making decisions. So I think a way to keep themselves viewing the future and keeping themselves motivated is to ask themselves, would I entrust my own loved ones with my care? And that was a fabulous tip that I got from one of our other student services directors, because sometimes you need to be brought back to the here and now. I think it's very easy to get in a pattern or a routine at work or even in school, and that you kind of lose that human element and you can't become more of a robot. You're going through the motions. So I think always keeping your why and am I whom I would entrust to my family is a great way to keep yourself motivated, because you're, as much as the staff and the faculty and your peers are here for you, you are going to play the biggest role in your self-motivation. And so maybe reminding yourselves in those struggling moments or in those moments when you've lost sight of the finish line, reminding why or who you are is going to be the best way to keep that motivation.
How can students make the most of the resources available to them?
Use them, right? So you have all these free resources available to you. I always I always say to students, like, whatever experience you would get or receive from being in person at your traditional brick and mortar, here, whether you're attending an associate's program, a bachelor's program, a program in our Latin division, or a graduate program, you are going to have the same opportunities presented to you that you would if you would have gone to that traditional brick and mortar. You're not losing anything. What it comes down to, are you using those resources that we make available to you? So, we spend a lot of time at the beginning of the students program, along with the faculty, talking about resources available, whether it's tutoring resources, meta, like we talked about for mental health, resources for finding jobs, because we do provide career assistance and resume assistance, leadership development. So we make all of these available, and we speak to them from the start. And then there are reminders throughout. You'll get those announcements to attend a seminar, or you'll get the reminder that the meta is there and available for you to search for any help that you might need. And all the courses have a student resource section in them. So it's there. It's just a matter of making the most of it by actually taking a minute to look at it and not to be afraid to use them if you need them, or ask for additional resources. So, I guess it goes back to our conversation on mental health. It's okay to need help, and just ask for it, because we do have it available for you, because we want you to be successful as much as you want to be successful. So really make the most out of it by using it and taking a look at your student services organization if you are a student here at Keiser University, and seeing the resources that are in there, or taking a look in the classroom resources and seeing what's there to help you, or pick up the phone and call somebody, whether it's your dean, your faculty, your program chair, or give us a call here in student services, and we can really help you on your way.
I have an extra question for you. What advice will you give to someone that wants to manage their time?
That's a great question. You need to figure out what kind of a system will work for you. That's the biggest step, is figuring out what's going to work. So if you are somebody who maybe is on your phone a lot, maybe it's an electronic calendar that'll work for you. And there's a lot of free apps that you can download to your phones or to your tablets. I use a paper system. It's called the Franklin Covey system. So it's a planning system, and there are various versions of it. I prefer taking a look at things at a weekly view. But you could look at things at a daily, at an hourly, but it's identifying what it is that you need to be successful. Like, are you going to look at it? Like, does a calendar or reminder help you? And one of the ways you can identify it, and we've had one of our professors, Dr. Allen, who's done a time management seminar for us a few times. You need to start by also identifying, what do you do with your time? Take a journal and see, like, okay, are you on your phone? Are you on social media for like 45 minutes or 5 hours? And is that what's eating up your time? If you're finding that you're crunched for time to do assignments, well, what did you do with your day? Where were you spending your time? Is there areas that we could cut back on and be more mindful of? And then once you've identified what kind of a system, whether it's electronic or paper, I mean, I'm a big fan of Canva. We use it here in student services. You use it in social media, but they have planner pages. So you could design for free a planner page that you could print out. Students can access their syllables, before classes start, and you can take a look at all these deadline dates, and you can start identifying them. And start planning out what that calendar looks like for you, so you're aware of the deadlines. So start with your deadlines. How long it takes you to do certain tasks, so figuring out that time. But more importantly, you have to identify what's actually important and needs your attention, and what's just a distraction that, if you have the extra time to spend on it, not everything is not on fire all the time, right? Unless you're not paying attention to deadlines. And then everything becomes like this on fire, urgent situation. But it shouldn't be that way all the time. Yeah, you're going to get last minute things that spring up. You can't control. It happens. But for the most part, when we talk about looking at school in your assignments and even at work, you have an understanding of what's due and when and what's expected of you. So if you start with those elements and start being mindful of project completion, if you will, and you can start plugging and playing with the calendar system, and then you're going to find that you're going to be managing your time a lot better, especially when you know what is eating up your time. Once you start identifying your distractions, it'll help bring focus to things, and then identifying what's important and then scheduling it out. So that way you do have time to do even the fun things. You'll find that you're going to be a little bit less stressful and that you can handle those emergency fire situations when they pop up. So, and it'll be much more manageable once you start actually paying attention.
And that's a great advice. And thank you for joining us in this podcast.
And thank you. I'm glad we got to do this jointly, because a lot of the times, you mentioned content before, you rely on the rest of us to provide you with content. So I always get the opportunity to partner with you and work with you on the podcast and on the content, or giving you the content. You make everything look pretty and presentable. So it just made sense to do this episode together. And we appreciate what you do, really turning what we do tangible. And I know that when I say it, that you really make us look good and that we are doing our job, whether it's us in student services or even the faculty. You really help bring to light what is happening in the background. So we are truly appreciative and for this forum to have conversations like this. So thank you for what you do for this institution, and keeping us connected as a community, no matter where we are at or what our role is with this university. And we hope you all have enjoyed the insights or the behind the scenes peek at what we do here in student services. It's certainly not everything, but it's a great snapshot of what you all get to experience as a student, as a community partner. And if you haven't already, I'm going to say it, make sure you guys are liking, subscribing, and following the Graduate School across all social media platforms. We're on Instagram, we're on LinkedIn, we're on Facebook, and of course, we're on YouTube, which is the home of this podcast. So we hope you enjoyed today's episode, and we will catch you on the next one.
Thank you for journeying with us today on Keiser Voices, the Story of Success. As we close this chapter, remember, every story has its next page.